Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review of Chainsaw Man Volumes 2 through 11. And you're probably like, Master Gallengeist, why are you doing all this when you pretty much had done like a single review for like the first volume? Because the plan was to pretty much go through probably certain volumes at a time. However, I fell into a hole and just buzzed right through all these motherfuckers, and I just thought it would be better to go through and understand how this kind of works out, because I believe that this is kind of the culmination, the end of the arc, end of part 1, public safety arc. Yes, from 11. And this will probably be where I kind of hop off on this. Not because I think it's bad or horrendous or anything like that. I've read and watched stuff that has been vastly more horrible than this. It just, as I was going through with this, there were certain kind of problems that popped up that I'm just like, it kind of like messes with me. Because we go back and we see that, like, he has to deal with the whole bat thing and understanding what's kind of going on, and we see him going from this guy that's pretty much just interested in, like, the barest kind of necessities, and then, like, touching boobs and all that kind of shit, and kind of gradually working his way through and getting really kind of fucked up with kind of what goes on in this world of getting introduced to Power's antics. This Aki dude who's got more going on than you'd think of at first. And then it just kind of starts snowballing to such a degree that it's just like, what the fuck's going on? It has an escalation problem for me, because a lot starts happening faster than it should, and it's like, why is this occurring here? We really need other things going on here, because, granted, that's not me trying to, like, draw certain kind of things out. It's, you don't pull out your Frieza level threat when Goku's like little Goku in Dragon Ball. You kind of need to build up to that and build up that kind of antagonistic kind of thing, because we get through this, we see him understanding his chainsaw kind of powers, and how the rest of kind of society works out. That the devil hunters make contracts with different kind of things and different kind of devils, and that gives them powers, but usually there's certain kind of trade-offs, like Aki is able to make a contract with the Fox Devil, which a lot of people are able to do that, which kind of brings up the effect of, like, are there other devils that can kind of do that kind of shit, of having multiple contracts with multiple people like that, because we mainly get through most of this, and most of the other ones have just contracts with just, like, certain kind of ones. Except in Makima. Yeah, Makima's case, which that goes fucking nuts. But we see that he's kind of getting, the best kind of bits that we get into are, like, when Aki is kind of like the big brother and trying to, like, take care of Denji and Power, and then kind of dealing with their shenanigans and shit. And then this is where Makima pretty much starts to be like, hey, I'm gonna make you a deal. You kill the Gun Devil, and I'll grant you any kind of one wish. And we learn that the Gun Devil is pretty much behind pretty much everybody's fucking damage in this series at this point, and that devils get increased power from eating its flesh, because it's got bullet fragments and shit around, which is weird, and they're trying to find the Gun Devil by using this because it would pull towards it. However, that is then kind of changed up at the end, where they're not actually trying to kill the Gun Devil. It's very kind of strange. The best kind of bits are kind of the action bits and dealing with the, like, weird kind of art styles and shenanigans that occur. The art on this is fucking on point. It does really kind of cool shit in how it presents action and presents character, mainly with Denji and Aki and Power, and definitely Makima. But as the story kind of progresses and we see Denji kind of understanding this world more, it just starts to kind of spiral kind of more out of control for certain kind of things, to where the plot kind of demands that we have to get to certain kind of places before we really need to, if that makes sense. The pacing issues are what kind of go nutty. Let's see here. Oh yeah, and there's like sick barfing scenes that like pop up. Now granted, it's not a giant kind of thing, like it's not like it's a complete kind of thing. I mean, this is kind of nutty because Himeno kind of kisses him and then fucking barfs in his mouth. It's just gross. And then it's not that it happens frequently, but barf pops up in like the weirdest kind of places, and it makes more of an appearance than I think it should. But that's kind of more to my taste, where I'm kind of more uncomfortable with it, where if you don't have a problem with it, that's cool. You know what I mean? I'm just saying that is just like, alright. Now that one is like, shit. Denji's kind of figuring out, like, oh god, when it's really focused on Denji, I think is its strongest kind of power of trying to figure out what he kind of wants to do in the world, how he is getting out from his really fucked up situation that was presented in the first volume, and trying to figure out who he wants to be. That's the real strength. And then seeing him kind of interacting with Aki and Power are where it's the strongest. Then it just starts throwing in kind of characters that kind of go nutty. They start doing off with like fighting devils and whatnot, and then we suddenly have like the gun devil going after them and trying to kill like the whole division, and it's just like, what? I mean, I don't need to have like 3 volumes or whatnot of it explaining and showing kind of regular devil hunting kind of stuff, but we then go to them trying to take out the special division under the gun devil's orders, and then we get this kind of cool scene where Makima is using some of her contracts to kind of take out people from afar, actually using and killing other people to do it. It's like, what the fuck? Now granted, that does showcase some crazy ass art and everything, but it's like, shit. It just gets to like a power escalation and not even power creep. You need to be in a place long enough to understand what the power creep starts to go on. We're starting to get into like crazy ass shit, and it's never really explained why these other kind of people, because Denji starts fighting this dude who's kind of similar to him, doing a sword kind of thing going on. That's how he gets fucked up in this kind of one. But it just, they don't really explain it that well of what kind of goes on. And then, of course, they get trained, him and Power, to be kind of better and to get through these kind of scenarios and everything. Let's see here. Then we get other kind of fiends introduced, which I kind of am alright with, but they don't really get much characterization, in my opinion. Like, this dude keeps calling Denji like Lord Chainsaw and everything, and eventually, throughout the rest of this kind of arc, we get that, like, evidently the chainsaw, like, the understanding that I get from this, now granted, if I'm wrong, please explain it to me in the comments. I always like to learn more of what's going on. But evidently we learn that the devils, they die in this world, and then they go to hell, and then when they die in hell, they come back in this world as a cycle of death and rebirth, and everything going on. But the thing is, we then learn that the Chainsaw Devil is, like, super uber awesome for this kind of thing, and that most of the devils killed in hell, when we got this angel devil that talks about, like, yeah, when I pulled this thing and heard the vroom, that's the kind of thing that most of the devils hear before they die. And then, at some point, we also get introduced that the Chainsaw Devil, if they eat you, erases you from existence. Because we also get at a certain point that this is like 1997, and Makima's like saying that, fucking the Nazis in World War II were like removed it just didn't make any sense. It's like, okay, and nothing much more is done with that except factoring into Makima's plan. And the thing is, I don't mind her as a villain. She's definitely got interesting goals and motivations. However, she just is able to win too much and effectively. I mean, granted, we see her just doing all this kind of stuff, and she gets stuff that's more like the plot demand / ass pull level kind of stuff of like, oh, of course she's like. It all comes down to execution of how it goes. I don't mind if a villain or even a protagonist or any kind of character has a plan for an eventuality that occurs. It's how it's executed and brought into play. If I have a plan for somebody firing a bottle rocket at my head that includes me being able to phase shift my density because I knew that somebody was going to go for a headshot for me one day because of the things that I had been doing. How it's done needs to be showcased well and executed well. If it just pops up out of nowhere and you have to explain it after the fact, it's kind of like, alright, you kind of get a little bit uneasy for it. But if you see it happen and you get it in, okay, you see like a flashback or whatnot, you show and you tell about what's kind of going on. You see that this person kept getting hit in the head as a kid. And they're like, I don't want to get fucking hit in the head or killed by getting hit in the head. And they create themselves to have phase density on that. That's a little bit different. Here, we get to points where they try and like kill her ass, and then you kind of learn that she's made contracts with like the prime minister or whatnot, and any kind of damage done to her is then done to like other people of the Japanese citizenry. Shit. And I'm just like, she gets to such a level of villainousness that I'm like, why is she even in... Why was she given this kind of level of power to begin with? Now, granted, I understand she's a controlled devil and she could get people to do whatever the fuck she wants. But there's still a base kind of level of like, okay, wouldn't anybody start figuring out, oh, that's kind of weird, because then we get to the point that like we learn that the gun devil did this whole kind of thing and unleashed this unspeakable kind of like wave of destruction upon the world. And then you learn that like most of the governments of the world have pieces of this motherfucker of like certain percentages, and it's like a Cold War kind of standoff. It's like, what the fuck? It just started confusing me to the point of like, you set this kind of goal, and then you start kind of like twisting it and warping it, and it's just like, why? I thought that this was an interesting kind of thing, and then like we built up and we bang, and it's like, all right, now misdirection time. Ooh, it's weird. Let's see here. Still going on with that. A date with Makima. Then we get like a bomb person and everything. And we learn that Denji killed his father. Pretty much as an act of self-preservation. We had this whole kind of door thing, and it's just like, it starts to feel like they're utilizing more tropes. And I don't have a problem with tropes or cliches. It's all on how it's executed. If it's executed in a fresh, kind of exciting way, I don't mind it as much. Here, it's more just like a lot of shonen tropes, a lot of Dragon Ball kind of fighting, Naruto kind of trope level kind of stuff that starts going on. And granted, when it's the action scenes and everything kind of going on, the art's phenomenal. It's beautiful to see. But it then starts getting in the way of the character, because then you got Denji staying at kind of base level stupid. Like, he learns certain kind of stuff and tries to figure out certain kind of stuff, but I don't feel that there's a lot of growth, or as much growth as I would have liked throughout these volumes, because we do get him to a certain kind of point at the end where he's able to have defeated Makima, but it's just like, okay. It more again goes to the plot demanding that characters act in certain ways rather than characters acting in certain ways because of their growth or development or what they've learned and what they've done. I know that's a weird kind of distinction. You're probably like, what are you kind of talking about? What I mean is, in a story, sometimes you get to a certain kind of point and something happens and you're like, that feels kind of off to me. And what I mean by that is, like, a character acts in a certain way, either kind of smarter than they should be or dumber than they should be, to make sure that something works out into the effect plot-wise. Now, granted, there is also the opposite of this that can happen, i.e., a character acts in a certain way that derails the plot. Either smarter or stupider, they die or they live when they should or shouldn't, and that then in turn affects drastically the course of the plot. Say like Game of Thrones. And if you went along real world kind of logic and seeing how Ned Stark and Robb Stark do vastly stupid things, they die, and then you keep getting kind of these, you then have to keep coming up with your new kind of protagonist. However, if you go along the lines that they should get real world consequences for what kind of occurs, those heroes are pretty much going to get screwed over unless you're able to use plot armor in an effective way that's not too plot armor tanky. I know that sounds like a tangent, but the thing is, Denji is very just kind of, I don't feel that he like gets to a certain kind of point that works out well for him. I don't feel that he's gotten smarter or really thought that much through his life. More that the plot demands things happen to him and he's got to continue going on with that. Now, that's not to say he does not have introspection. He does go to Makima being fucked up because the gun devil makes Aki into a fiend and he kills him, and he has vast guilt over that. And he's trying to examine his life and he's just fucked up over it. And it's like, it's powerful, but it doesn't really go too much more than that. It's like, oh, alright. It's really kind of weird. And it's just more like explosions, fight scenes, blood, guts, and gore. And if that's your bag, that works out for you. Oh, another kind of weird point. We get introduced to this concept that the devils get stronger as they are feared. And I'm like, okay, fine with that. Makima pretty much tries to depower Denji as Chainsaw Man by making sure that the public loves him as a hero. And I don't think that should work out as well as it does here. Because to me, the way these devils are structured are more kind of like spirits. And yes, if you're going more along the devil lines and more evil kind of things, negative emotions would probably have better kind of ways. Because the whole thing with the gun devil is that it's feared, and that's why everybody's afraid of it. And they try and outlaw guns, but of course there's the illicit gun trade as well. But she depowers him by pretty much making him beloved, which I think should actually not work as well as it should. Granted, it should have a different kind of effect on him, maybe making him less violent and shaping him that way, but still have a strength kind of aptitude for it, instead of just power scaling him down to have him in the back corner or certain kind of stuff. Like, it almost sounds like putting like a strange handicap on a Super Saiyan just for plot reasons. Just out of nowhere, like just mucking with the base kind of form. I'm not against it. Again, it comes down to its execution. I'm like, I don't think that should be working out as well as it should be. Any other kind of weird... I know it's kind of weird. Oh yeah, and then the main kind of structure follows. They do a little bit of stuff, and then people are like, assassins come after. There's like an assassin's arc to get him to have his heart, and then it just kind of goes even further off the rails because someone uses a hell devil, to drag them all to hell. And I'm like, shouldn't we have built up to this? Like, it didn't feel like it worked out well. And then after that, they encounter this really super, like, darkness devil. And, like, people lose arms, people lose heads, but then they all somehow get out of hell. When I'm like, this should have been drastically better built up, because if you're dealing with devils and them coming from hell, you want to build up to that, not just randomly be like, whoa, they're in hell. This should be a bigger kind of thing, and they just get out of it. It's, let's see. Like, Makima was able to get him out of it. So weird. And then, of course, Denji's whole idea was he's able to pretty much pull a switcheroo on Makima, kill her, and eat her, and then she, like, comes back almost lickety-split. It was kind of crazy. I'm like, then who killed her in hell? Or did she just get herself killed to come back? And then this one dude's like, yeah, you're going to take care of this kid. And I'm like, alright. And Puchita's pretty much like, yeah, I wanted you to have a family, so this will lead you to your normal life. Kind of setting us up at the end here. Where he's, like, going to high school and having to deal with this little girl. It just seems so random to me. And we learned that Puchita's dream was to have somebody to hug, but he was too strong. And that he wants to grant the controlled devil's dream as well. Because they were pretty much going to get rid of all use the chainsaw devil to eat all pretty much the bad concepts of the world. Which sounds alright, but there's better kind of ways to kind of go about it. So, I enjoyed going through this series to understand its characterizations. Denji and Power and Aki really had potential to me, but it just blasted off, introduced so many different kind of characters that were just like, now they had potential on their own, but their execution of, like, trying to understand their characters and motivations were just kind of thrown under the bus as the plot kind of steamrolled to get us kind of to the end point of this arc. And I was just confused at this. I'm like, oh, alright. That's kind of a way to end it. And I don't think it's bad, but I wouldn't recommend it to a lot of people. I'd recommend it to people that like the action scenes, that are fine with the blood, guts, and gore kind of thing going on with it, and are really interested in it for its batshit insane kind of things that it does. I will give it with that. But if you're into if you want better kind of pacing, a better kind of balance of characters and plot, I would definitely recommend any kind of other series. This one's a weird one for me. I was going to do a couple volumes at a time, but then I just kind of steamrolled through it, and I'm like, this is really weird, and I can't just talk about... See, normally I would hard stop myself on certain kind of things because of what I would term like a bleed over effect. If you know what's kind of coming, you then start kind of knocking on, and it's just better to kind of go through and talk about how it kind of goes through with it, rather than getting into like the minute details of certain kind of volumes, because sometimes you learn that they're not really important about what's kind of going on. You can get some certain kind of character development of Aki and Himeno because of understanding how the gun devil kind of affected them, how they were going to kill the gun devil, and how their kind of buddy system worked, and how they kind of were trying to help each other, and then Himeno sacrificing herself to try and save Aki because she wanted him to live a normal life. yes, that's kind of cool. But the thing is, when you then start looking in the overall kind of arcing story and how it kind of works, you're like, yes, that's good, but we don't get as much payoff on that kind of stuff as possible because of the utter batshit insanity of sending them to hell. Having assassins pop up out of nowhere to go after Denji's heart. That not getting completely resolved. Having like human weapons being under Makima's control. Makima being the ultimate villain, and how that kind of build up doesn't work exactly as well as I would have liked. Granted, I don't believe that she shouldn't have been the villain. It's just that build up and execution didn't work as well for me as I would have liked. And that's kind of all it kind of comes down to. This is an interesting one for me because I've read books that just I've not been into and I would not recommend to people, and it really wouldn't work on like there's I've got subjective problems and objective problems, and that works for this as well, but I do not think it is objectively bad. I think it's got problems that might be hammered out in like the next arc or whatnot, but I'm kind of okay. I kind of got an ending kind of bit in a place that I can stop. And certain times in certain kind of mediums and story forms, it's nice to have that kind of stopping off point where you're just like, I'm good. I got to a certain kind of point and I'm alright. That I'm pretty much here. Like, there could be interesting kind of stuff that they do with Denji, Pochita, power and all that kind of stuff, but I'm alright. Now, yeah. So, those are my opinions on volumes 2 through 11 and the overall kind of arching story and arc. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.